So Scotland have now announced their team that is going to be jet-setting off to South America this summer. And they've got some very, very fun games ahead of them. What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. So Scotland have announced their team that's going to be going to South America this year for the July internationals. Now, this actually came out a little bit of a while back. They've snuck this past me, like Darcy Graham going down the wing and finding that bit of room on the outside. I've completely missed this team getting announced. I've been keeping it today. We've done the Wales team and the South Africa team. I've also seen Australia have announced theirs, but it's got to be time for a bit of Scotland news. So as we've done with those videos, we'll check the team over here. We have actually got some graphics today coming directly from the Scotland Twitter page, so I don't have to make them anyway. I believe the team is relatively in the right order. We'll go through, we'll talk about the team, who we think's been picked well, who we think maybe has been missed off the list. I believe all these are in the right order in terms of their positions. I've seen like 6 different lists for this Scotland team, and all of them are jumbled up, so if any of them are out of order, please forgive me. I'm taking this directly from Scotland, taking it with the Scotland marketing team. So let us begin by taking a look at the forwards that have been out, starting off with the props. So we got Jamie Batty, Pierre Schoeman. I love Pierre Schoeman. I think it's awesome. Rory Sutherland getting back into this team. I feel like I haven't heard Rory Sutherland for a good while, actually. It's nice to see him back in this team now. Zander Ferguson. Javan Sebastian, I'm going to guess. Or Javan. I would imagine Javan. It's not a name I know. I believe he plays over at the Scarlets, but not a lad I've seen a lot from. And finally, Murphy Walker. Another name that's a bit new for me. Now, one thing I don't have on this list, very unfortunately, is a list of the uncapped players. There are quite a few uncapped players, so I'm probably just going to go off. If I haven't heard of them, they've probably got very few caps. I believe, because I looked it up, that Javan has actually got 1 cap, although the name absolutely has gone past me. So in terms of the prop selection, it's looking pretty good. There's an awful lot of weight in this set of props here. I'm liking this. Pierre Schoeman is probably my favourite prop in the Scotland team at the minute. I think he's an absolute monster. He had a really good Six Nations. He got in my team of the week a couple of times, actually, Pierre Schoeman. So nice to see him in there. Zander Ferguson will just be a matter of keep your tempers at bay. Don't get yourself carded. I think it'll be really nice. Really looking forward to see Rory Sutherland back in this team as well. In terms of the hookers, then we've got Ewan Ashman, Dave Cherry, and George Turner. Only the 3 hookers is probably a sensible coverage. Yeah, I think 3 good picks, to be honest. This is probably the 3 most people would be expecting, I'd probably say. George Turner and Ewan Ashman are both very good in terms of running as well with the ball, and Dave Cherry's not that bad as well, to be fair. George Turner, for me personally, would probably be my first pick there, but I'm sure some Scotland subscribers can tell me where I'm wrong with saying some of this. But I would probably be picking George Turner the most out of this, but I think there's some good picks there. In terms of the lock department there, we have got Scott Cummings, Grant Gilchrist, Johnny Gray, Jamie Hodgson, Sam Skinner, and Glenn Young. Now, Grant Gilchrist has been named captain, which is a big move. I know there's a couple of other people that absolutely would want to put their hands up for captaincy in this. So Grant Gilchrist, I'm not sure if he's been named to be captain for their first game. We'll get onto their games a little bit later on because they've got some exciting games coming up. Or whether he's going to be the captain for the whole tour. I've only seen him announced for captain of 1 game, and then maybe they'll change it later. So we'll see what goes on there. But there's some talented locks in here, to be honest. We've seen a couple of these guys now doing well in the Six Nations. I think Johnny Gray's playing well. Sam Skinner is one of those players who a lot of people mention every time we get around to do team of the week. He never seems to make it into my team of the week, which is maybe a bit harsh because he's always actually very, very highly consistent in terms of just being able to do that background stuff. Just the breakdowns, the tackles. He doesn't really get a lot of line outs wrong when he's the jumper. I think that's a pretty set up move there. They're very used to a lot of these lads playing together as well in terms of like club level and stuff. So I think this is a good setup. I think this is a good selection of locks. And a lot of good replacements as well. You know, I've got a feeling your top 2 here, again, people might disagree with me. Personally, for me, I would maybe go for, Grant Gilchrist being captain, I assume means you'd probably take over that. Maybe you go Johnny Gray and get Grant Gilchrist. Maybe some people would want Scott Cummings and Grant Gilchrist. But the ability just to swap people out, I think is a really nice move. On to the back row then, and this for me is the area where Scotland really thrive. As what we've seen in the Six Nations, they are beginning to get more and more people playing in this back row that just have really, really high standards. So we've got Magnus Bradbury, who is nice to see him back in there now, because of course there's a bit of a fight going on in terms of that number 8 shirt. Magnus Bradbury is also competing for that alongside people like Matt Fakerson, so hopefully it'll be nice to see him. Andy Christie, who I think we got to see Was it once in the Six Nations? I think he might have only been in there once. Luke Crosby, Rory Darge. There's the name. Rory Darge. Now, there was a boy who came out of nowhere. For me personally, came into that Six Nations. He was in about 3 of my team weeks in the Six Nations. He was awesome. Really looking forward to see what he can get up to with going on the South America tour. He's an absolutely solid player. People talk about people like Hamish Watson, Jamie Ritchie, and even external to their teams, people like Tom Curry and other sort of number 7s and stuff in the world. But in terms of that flanker position, I think Rory Darge is coming into his own. I believe he can also play 6 and 7 in terms of flanker. Not every flanker is capable of moving between positions. They're not necessarily the hardest position to swap between, but I believe he's very comfortable playing both. So really looking forward to seeing him getting there. Matt Fakerson, who we've already mentioned, the big boy. He's the mini Jack Conan, but not so mini. Loves running that up from the back. Ben Muncaster, who's a name I don't know at all. He's going to be one of the young cap players coming into this team. Looking forward to see what he gets up to. And then, of course, finally, Hamish Watson, the man that was always going to be in there. Been off with the Lions last year, came back in. He didn't have as blazing Six Nations as he did last year. He was definitely on top of his game last year, but this year coming up, he did fine. He played. I think that's a bit of a testament to how well he plays, though, normally, is that him playing average is probably a lot of other people's very good, but because we see him playing at such a high standard a lot of the time, I think he got away with saying quite an average Six Nations, but he still probably played well. Might be my memory not really remembering. But in terms of the forwards, this is a solid looking pack. There's a nice sprinkling of caps ranging from quite high to quite low. There's certainly a lot of the standard Scotland team. I think Scotland have got a lot better in recent years in terms of actually creating a 15 that they sort of set up, and especially that 1 to 8, we're beginning to see the same names week on week on week. I think with the games coming up they've got, though, there's the potential for some big switch-ups. On to the backs then, starting off with the scrum halves. 3 scrum halves named coming in now for the Scotland team. George Horne getting back into this team. I feel like George Horne was he injured during the Six Nations? I feel like I didn't hear his name a great deal. Ali Price and then Ben White. Ben White was the lad who was really taken over in the Six Nations. Maybe George Horne was out for a little bit. Ben White came on for a couple of games during the Six Nations and exploded onto it, to be fair. Really wanting to get involved with this scrum half shirt. Really nice to see. Of course, Ali Price probably still going to be the favourite in there for a lot of these games, but it's nice for him to have some competition. It helps drive you to get towards somewhere. And nice to have a young lad like Ben White coming in now. Not a lot of caps for him. Hopefully, throughout the summer tour, can get a few more games in. Joining the scrum halves, of course, that halfback partnership is going to be the fly halves. So we've got Adam Hastings, Blair Kinghorn named at fly half, which is an interesting call here. And then finally, Ross Thompson. Now, Ross Thompson's not a name I know particularly well at all. I've just had to actually look him up because I've never heard of his name. He plays for Glasgow Hawks is the only thing I can find out about him. So I'm going to guess that was more of an amateur career. And now that he's moved up, I assume he will have moved on to Glasgow Warriors. I'm sure if there's any Glasgow Warriors fans, they can confirm that for me. This is quite a surprising set of fly halves. Now, no Finn Russell. I haven't looked that up, unfortunately. That might be an injury thing. That might be commitment, obviously. Playing abroad, he might not be in for this. It might be that maybe a bit of a lackluster Six Nations. I don't remember him particularly flaring up in that Six Nations. So maybe it's a bit of a switch up. Adam Hastings coming back from that long-term time away. It's nice to see him getting back into this team. Blair Kinghorn, I know, is capable of playing that fly half. We also see him on the wing and full back and just wherever he fancies playing, to be honest. I believe he can play fly half, but from the games I've seen him play fly half, he's very formulaic, I guess would be the right word. I never really see him explode in terms of being in that fly half. I see him much more as a distributor, much more as just sort of organising where people are going to be in their attacking line, offloading, picking the pass. I don't really see a lot of innovation from Blair Kinghorn when he plays fly half, so maybe he can prove me wrong when he gets around to some of these international games. Normally, I actually kind of prefer him at fullback when I've seen him there, just because I think he's got good coverage. He's got a good boot on him. But yeah, if a fly half, you just don't see that same little bit of flair that you get to see with someone like Finn Russell. As for the rest of the backs, there seems to be all a big mishmash of things, so we'll just sort of run through them all and then talk about them overall. So we've got Mark Bennett, Matt Curry, Darcy Graham, Damien Hoyland, Rory Hutchinson, I see his name back in here as well, Sam Johnson, Hugh Jones making a comeback. Now, I did see him, was it last weekend? I did see him making a lovely little break in his club level game. Nice to see him getting back into this Scotland team. He really sort of is either very much in or out of this Scotland team, but he's come back in. Rufus Mclean, who was one of those sort of shining stars. A lot of people talking about him, but hasn't had a great deal of game time yet. Looking forward to see a bit more from him. Kyle Rowe, Ollie Smith, Sione Tuipulotu, and Duhan van der Merwe. Now, a lot of big names in here. Again, this is a nice spread for this Scotland team. I'm liking where Scotland have gone with this. A couple of lower cap players, a couple of higher capped players. You can sort of sprinkle them in together. I think there's a nice little setup here. A couple of names coming back in here. People like, Sam Johnson has been playing quite well at 12. He's actually been stepping up a bit. I mean, he ruined my fantasy league for me by stealing that try away from... who was it? Was it Kyle Steyn? I think it was Kyle Steyn, who's not named in this side. So obviously Sam Johnson taking that try, ruined Kyle Steyn's career. But he's been playing well in that centre channel. So having someone on the outside, and he played for a number of years with Hugh Jones in that outside centre shirt. So I think that's nice to see them two coming back. A couple of these new lads coming in as well here now, going to be fighting this out. Tuipulotu brings a very different dynamic to Sam Johnson as well, which I really like to see. Sam Johnson is very good at just sort of picking those lines. He gets himself with a hand on the ball, will try and run round people. But Tuipulotu for me is one of those players. He's... I'm trying to think of a like for like, a bit more like a Jamie Roberts type of that inside centre. He will happily just get the ball and go through you. So they've not only got like a diverse range of players, but also the way the players play is quite different there. So nice to see across the board. And then, of course, you've got people like Duhan van der Merwe and Darcy Graham. I imagine most people would have them down as the main two wingers going into this. And again, we saw them in the Six Nations offering two very different styles. Duhan van der Merwe's you smash through you and run you over, and Darcy Graham's your dancing feet will get around you no matter what. I think this is really nice. I think this is a really nice setup. It's interesting to see Stuart Hogg not mentioned in this. Now, I have to believe that's an injury. But just looking it up now, it seems to be that there was no injury for Stuart Hogg or for Finn Russell, which is quite interesting. I've only just had to quickly look that up because I didn't want to leave that out in the video. So neither of them just picked, which is an interesting call. It might be due to the games that are going on. It might be with a view towards the World Cup. Stuart Hogg, we know what Stuart Hogg brings. Maybe leaving him out is actually a very good tactical decision looking towards the future. It's most likely Stuart Hogg will be in that World Cup squad. It just is. For Scotland, he's always there. He offers pretty much everything, especially with now he's had a little bit of time even playing at fly half. We saw him playing as well. So he plays fullback to a pretty high standard, to be fair. I certainly preferred him last year as opposed to this year. I thought he got a bit greedy with the ball in hand sometimes again this year. I do like to see it when he plays the counter-attack but plays that team pressure. But of course, that big boot of his does actually save them quite a lot from that backfield, especially with a couple of the 50-22s he's picked up. So I think this is probably more of a future-proofing decision because by removing Stuart Hogg, you get to have someone else take over as captain. You also get to try out some other fullbacks. So when you get round to that World Cup, if for whatever reason Stuart Hogg's injured or can't make the World Cup or retires due to something else, you have other people with the experience. I imagine that's a coaching decision. I can't believe he's been left off out of being out of form, and even if Stuart Hogg is out of form, he seems to get in anyway. So I can't believe it's something to do with that. But a couple of big names missed there. But it's nice to see. It's nice to see a bit of a younger team. I think this is not necessarily just their summer squad thing. I think this is a World Cup future-proofing sort of squad. I think that's what they're going to be aiming for here. I think some of the lesser cap people get their time in now. And what we're going to have to move on to talking about is their games. And this is why I'm sort of thinking more about this. Now, the actual games that Scotland have got coming up are a little bit interesting. So starting off on the 25th of June, so in this month, we're not even into the July international, Scotland are going to be playing Chile. Now, Chile are not a team I know an awful lot about in terms of the world of rugby. I could not name you a single player. But they are going to be doing Chile versus Scotland A. Now, Scotland A, for everyone new to rugby, those sort of teams where you're playing, I don't even know what Chile would be considered as. They're tier 2, they might even be tier 3. I'm not even sure in terms of the world rankings or what have you. What we will probably be seeing there is very much a B team Scotland coming on. You probably won't be seeing a great deal of the big names. They'll be being saved for some of the later games. So that is probably why you've got so many uncapped players, so many lesser cap players in a team, just to get them that experience. Playing an international side, you can't take anything away from tier 2 nations. We saw that in the World Cup, Japan versus South Africa. Feels like so long ago now, but it happens. They were still classed as that tier 2 nation. They can still win a game if they come to fight. So I think it's absolutely worthy to put on some players that will be bringing you there. It's a good chance for Grant Gilchrist to get back in charge and take over the captaincy of a Scotland team against a team where they're probably more likely to win. If you were a bit of a betting person, you'd probably be still chucking it on Scotland Scotland to win that game, even with a bit of a B team. But it makes sense. That's probably why you've seen a couple of people like Finn Russell and Stuart Hogg left off, because they won't really be offering anything to those games. And then when they move on to the other games, which are going to be 3 games versus Argentina on the 2nd of July, 9th of July, 16th of July. 3 games versus Argentina, which are some tough games, which I'm really looking forward to. In all honesty, there's a couple of teams that we just rarely get to see play each other, and I feel like Argentina and Scotland are one of those sort of games that you don't get to see enough. Argentina, I think if you went a few years back, would probably be odds-on favourites for that. But more recently, Scotland improving. Argentina have been sort of steady, but sort of declining a little bit from the last few games I've seen them in. I would maybe still favour Scotland for this. It depends on the team they put out. Obviously, we'll be doing the preview videos when we get closer to that. But these will be really interesting games to see. And I think having necessarily a big starting 23 of all the standard Scotland players, if it ends up being like, oh, they win the first game 30 points to 0, not that they probably will, but if they did, then you don't really learn anything. You're not really giving anyone the opportunity. Games like Argentina, who are definitely a tier 1 nation, but they're not up there with teams like New Zealand and South Africa currently. It's probably worth putting on a team of half and half, lesser cap players, more experienced players, just to gel them together and get used to playing an international team to a higher standard. Scotland have a hard World Cup coming up. They need players to be ready to play high-end tier 1 nations, and getting the experience now is absolutely worth it. And people like Finn Russell and Stuart Hogg are more than versed in it. They've probably already shown everything they have to offer in terms of those games. So I think in terms of a coaching standard, this might be a really good move. Even if it leads to losses in the summer internationals, I don't think it's a bad move, because it helps you build towards that World Cup. But there we have it, guys. That's going to be my thoughts on the Scotland summer squad that has been announced. Let me know what you guys think of the team. Is there anyone missed off who you think should have been in? Is there anyone you're really surprised to see actually get into this squad? Make sure you do drop it down in the comments, because I love hearing from it. And there's always going to be people that know that little bit more than me about some of these other teams. So teams like Scotland I know quite a lot about, but I'm sure there's someone who knows a bit more who can drop down in the comments. Just someone to look out for. That's one thing I always like reading in the comments. Someone mentioning a name. Make sure you keep an eye on this lad, because he's up and coming. He's a lesser capped player. They're the ones to keep an eye on. They're always fun. So when we get around to doing some of the review videos and what have you, we can really keep a keen eye on those sorts of people. I really enjoyed that. But if you've enjoyed this one today, guys, make sure to drop this video a like, because it does really help the channel out. And we are going to do one of these sorts of videos for most of the teams that are going on in the summer internationals. I'm going to have to try and keep track of it as best as I can. But if you want to see videos like this for all the other teams, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. That way you know when those videos go up instantly. Like I said, we've already done some for a couple of the other teams, so make sure you go and check them out as well to get my thoughts on those. But I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys, and I will see you all next time. Bye bye.